Welcome to the very first edition of Anarchy Moments. At least that's what I'm going to call it for now. Because, as an anarcho-capitalist, I have moments of brilliance. I mean, they happen. They can't help but happen because, by the way, I am the Great One himself, founder of the Cynical Libertarian Society, in case you have no clue who you're talking to. As I go throughout my day, I sometimes have moments of greatness. Moments when I think of things that are so fucking brilliant that they need to be recorded. But I don't feel like doing an edition of stating the obvious. That's a lot of work. Got to set up the computer, all that other stuff. So these will be recorded on my handy dandy Zoom H2, which is a wonderful little piece of technology. If you're into audio recording, I highly recommend having one. Statist. As an ANCAP, whenever I encounter statist, they always have the same three arguments about why anarchy doesn't work. Will not work, cannot work, yada yada yada. The roads, the corporations, and the gangs. So here's what I mean by that. So you say to a statist, the state doesn't work, yada yada, anarchy, yada 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 yada. So the first thing the statist is going to say, well, but who would build the roads? Right, because all statists think that this is the most brilliant thing ever, and they think that they're the first person to think of this, and they think that nobody who is an ANCAP has ever thought about the roads before. So the question is, who's going to build the roads? The short answer is the same people who build the roads now. People who own companies that build roads. People who own asphalting equipment. People who work for those companies, they're going to build the roads. Right? The government is not building any roads. Obama and Biden and Pelosi are not out there with shovels building a fucking road. The same goddamn people that build roads now are going to build roads in an anarchist society. The only difference will be that they'll get paid directly. As it stands now, the taxpayers have their money stolen from the government. By the government. The government takes a cut of the money it steals from the taxpayer, in order to fund killing people in foreign countries with flying robots, and spying on the American people, and the war on drugs, and regulating marriage, and all the other shit that the government does. So the government takes a cut of the tax money, then the government takes a little bit of that tax money it stole, and it pays that to people to go out and half-ass build the roads, because that's what they do. They half-ass build the roads. That's why we live in a state of constant road maintenance, because the infrastructure sucks, because the people building it don't really give a shit about doing a quality job, because of course the shittier job they do, the sooner the road falls apart, the sooner the government gives them more money to go back and fix it. So in an ANCAP society, there's no government to steal the money. There's no government to spend large amounts of the money on shit like the war on drugs and killing brown people in Afghanistan with flying robots and all this other horse shit. So if you own a road building company, you go out and you say, hey, I can build roads. When people want roads, they'll come together. They will cough up the money. And I know you're saying nobody can do that. Okay, I'm not going to go through it all. Go to this thing called the interwebs and use this thing called Google, you may have heard of it, and look for Lysander Spooner. Try Googling, private roads. Google Lysander Spooner. Okay, all roads in the United States were privately built, privately owned, and privately operated until the government came in and took them all by force. Lots of people can build roads. People can come together. It's amazing, especially with there's this thing. It's called the internet. You might have heard of it. People can come together and donate money for projects through the internet. I know people who have done this stupid Kickstarter shit and all this other stuff. I despise cyber begging, but that's just me because I'm an asshole. Okay, you can raise hundreds, thousands, millions of dollars for things. You go on the internet, you say, hey, want to build a road from Fort Collins to Denver. Let's raise money. Everybody who wants to see, remember, you're not paying 50 to 75% of your income in the form of taxes anymore. The price of everything, because there's no government, because there's no taxes, the price of everything has plummeted. Because when you buy an object, when you buy a Zoom H2 recorder like I'm using, okay, the company that built it had to pay taxes on everything they bought to build it. They have to pay taxes on all the employees they pay to build it. Okay, so all of that adds to the cost. Well, then it has to be shipped. So the guy putting it in a truck and driving it, he's paying taxes, okay? That adds to the cost. It gets to the distributor. They got to pay taxes. That adds to the cost. All of the process of every fucking thing that comes into your life, there's taxes added to it at every level. Okay, shit that cost $100 in today's society right now, in an ANCAP society where there are no taxes, as they are very humorously called value-added taxes all along the way, a $100 object is going to be about a $7 object. Maybe a $20 object at the most. Everything will be much less expensive. You will have much less money. And this is assuming, of course, that the dollar, such as we understand it, is still even used as a form of currency. In ANCAP society, of course, there will be no national currency. So the dollar will be not even actually a factor in all of this. But all of this is way more in depth than we need to go. The point is, who's going to build the roads? The same fucking people who build roads now. Only citizens will come together and finance it. And the people who build roads will do a better job, because they will know that the people who are hiring them to buy the roads don't have money to have the roads rebuilt every 10 years. And if you do a shitty job building the roads and the road starts falling apart, you're not going to get any more jobs. When the government controls who builds the roads, you get the same idiots building the roads all the time, and nobody cares about the quality because the government, well, these are the preferred contractors. I've been there. I've done that. I've worked for the government in the state of Colorado. Preferred contractors is what they're called. And you have to use the preferred contractors, no matter how shitty they are. And many of them were mind-blowingly bad, but we had to give them their money. We had to give them your money, actually. It was your tax money, until the state of Colorado and the government of the United States took that money from you in the form of taxes. So that's who's going to build the fucking roads. After you explain to the statist who the hell's going to build the roads, the next thing they're always going to say is, well, but if there's no government, the corporations are going to take over and rule the world. If there is no government, there are no corporations. Corporations are a function of the government. Corporations exist because the government created laws that said a corporation is a person. It was the Supreme Court, remember, that ruled that corporations are people. Without a government, there is no Supreme Court. Without a Supreme Court to make a rule that corporations are people, and without the force and violence, the police, the judicial justice system, that's a joke, of the United States government, without all of those things to enforce the idea that a corporation is a person, corporations wouldn't be people. Corporations would not exist. Corporations amass the power they amass because many of them are on the receiving end of government funding, the entire military-industrial complex. All of those corporations got where they are by being given money by the government to create devices to kill people. Without the government, the military-industrial complex does not exist. Corporations exist because governments give them tax breaks. Other quote-unquote normal people, little people, mom and pop business owners have to pay taxes. The corporations get out of it. What was it last year, whatever, everybody was all, I saw this thing going around on Facebook about how General Electric paid no income taxes. I mean, do you think the mom and pop businesses get away with paying no income taxes? No. So the corporations have the money they have because the government gives them the money. The government buys their products. Nobody else would buy the products of a lot of these corporations. The government gives them tax breaks and incentives. And of course, in some cases, as we see with Messiah Care, the government forces people to buy their product. As I've said, I don't know how many times before, I lost count. Obamacare is a bailout for the health insurance corporations. It's forcing you to buy health insurance from the corporations. Okay, if nobody could force you to buy health insurance from the corporations, they'd go under. Right? The corporations, the automobile corporation, bailed out by the government. The banking corporations, bailed out by the government. Everybody's saying, well, if the corporations will take over. No. Without a government, and of course the other thing the government does that enables corporations is passing laws that benefit the corporations, right? All of this shit like American with Disabilities Act. I know you think that that's because the government cares so much about disabled people. That is not what the fuck that's about. If you think that, you're a fucking idiot. Here's what it's about. You pass a law, you say and this is me, been there, done this. This is actual real life experience. Was once co-owner, partial owner of a coffee shop. Okay? The government passes a law. Every coffee shop has to have a fucking wheelchair access and a door that has the little crash bar on it that they can push. Okay? So we had to put on our door this little crash bar. Even though the crash bar was non-functional, the door did not actually latch unless it was actually locked. When it was unlocked, the door was a piece of wood on hinges. You could push anywhere on the door and the door would open. But because of ADD, we had to spend like $2,000 fucking dollars buying the ADA, whatever the fuck it is, ADEA fucking Americans Disability, ADA certified push bar and put it on the door, even though the push bar did not latch. Now, of course, Starbucks, a corporation, can afford to buy these things all day long because they have a shit ton of money. Mom and pop companies, $2,000 is a lot of goddamn money when you're trying to make payroll every month. So all these regulations that you think are there to help the poor people and the disabled people and the black people and the brown people and the female people and the purple people eaters and all this other shit, those things are not there to fucking help you. Those things are there to crush small businesses with regulations and excessive cost so that the corporations can prevail. Without all of these things, without all the things the government does to prop up the corporations, there are no corporations. This is why the state is more than just the government. The state also includes, as I've said before, the corporations and other things. So now after this, the next thing the statist will say, because they think this is brilliant, nobody's ever thought of this before. Okay, but if we have anarchy, there'll be gangs running around with guns, and they will control everything, and whoever is the strongest, everybody will have to obey him, and he'll be like a warlord, and everyone will have to bow to his power, and he'll rule the land. And any good ANCAP is going to look at this person and say, you mean as opposed to now, where the President of the United States is essentially a warlord with no limits on his power. He can indefinitely detain American citizens. He can have American citizens killed with flying robots. He can kill people in other countries with flying robots. He can send troops to other countries to kill people. He is monitoring, he and the government are monitoring all the communications on the internet made by everybody. They're also taking photographs of all the mail that is delivered, and the police forces, which are ever expanding, can break down your door, come into your house anytime they want, even without a warrant, simply by saying you might have drugs in there. They have machine guns, they have body armor, they have armored cars, they have tanks, they have sniper rifles. And all police officers walking around are armed, and the police are using Facebook as their division of pre-crime to actually arrest people who have not committed crimes but have simply posted things on Facebook. And if you disobey this gang, then you will be locked in a cage or possibly killed. So you're saying that if we had anarchy, we live in a world pretty much exactly like the one we live in now that you're defending. Because the gang, the warlord, is the president of the United States, and his gang has the most guns. And you have to obey them. Or you'll be locked up, or you'll be killed. If you think an anarchist society can't work, and I like to use one close to home. There are other examples of this as well. And Somalia is not one of them, by the way. Remember before the American government embarked on a campaign to exterminate the Indians? And I know they're supposed to be called Native Americans, but if you're expecting political correctness, you're on the wrong fucking podcast. Remember before the American government that you support and obey, and remember back before they embarked on a campaign to exterminate the American Indians? Well, let's see. Now, the Indians didn't have roads, but after, they could walk. I'm sure they had trails. They didn't need anybody to make trails for them. They didn't need a government to make trails. Then Europeans came over, brought horses. They rode the horses. Again, they didn't need anybody to use force and violence to create trails for them to ride their horses on. Trails were created naturally by people riding their horse in the same place whenever they did so. So roads, not a problem. They lived fine without roads. And why do we need roads? Because we don't have airships, because we don't have flying cars, because we don't have jetpacks, because all of this stuff has been stopped. Because if all the effort that went into the research and development to make machines of war and killing and violence had gone into making flying cars, we wouldn't need any fucking roads, because everybody would have a flying car. But then, of course, the statists would go, oh my God, who's going to regulate the flying cars? Why, people would fly into each other all the time and they'd all die. And of course, this is the problem with arguing with a statist. A statist is somebody who believes that people are too stupid to, for example, not fly their flying car into another flying car. However, these same people are smart enough to elect politicians to make choices for them. So this is why trying to argue, and I mean argue in the sense of argue as in make a structured, reasoned argument, not argue as a shouting match. I know I have to define my words because statists don't know what argue actually means. This is why arguing with a statist is a waste of time, because they're just not very fucking smart. Alright, where was I? See, I digressed. Let's see, flying cars, stupid people, voting, roads! Right, okay, so, the Indians didn't have any roads, didn't need roads. Somehow or another, without the government to make roads for them, they still managed to get from one place to another. Now, the American Indians lived in an anarchist society. They did not have a central government controlling all of the Indian tribes on the North American continent. Yet, somehow or another, corporations didn't emerge and take control and enslave all of the American Indians. And The American Indians didn't have a centralized government overseeing all the American Indian tribes on the North American continent, and yet there were not gangs under the control of warlords running around killing everybody. How did that happen? According to the Statists, this is impossible because the Statists will argue, the Hobbesian argue, that people cannot have civilization without the state, which brings up an interesting question. If civilization can only exist in the presence of the state, how were there people before the state? How did anybody live long enough to create the state? Because in this world where you come out of the womb and people are instantly trying to kill you and rape you and attack you, and the corporations are enslaving you, and there aren't any roads, and so you can't get any iPods or any food or anything like that, and you're starving in the gutter, and the gangs are coming after you, and the warlord wants you to die. How in the world did anybody manage to create the state? How did they live long enough? Because without the state, we'd all die, right? There's no roads, the corporations own everything, the gangs are killing everybody, because of course the corporations which own the land are just going to let the gangs run wild and kill all their workers and customers. I mean, come on, think about it. Try fucking thinking about it for a minute. If this really happens, if the corporations are ruling the land and the warlord comes in to kill all the corporation's workers and employees and customers without people to build whatever shit the corporation sells and buy whatever shit the corporation sells, the corporation doesn't have any money. You think the corporation might shoot the gang and the warlord? I don't know, man. Just try fucking thinking about it. So how is it that people existed before the state and managed to reach a point where they could actually create the state? And then as I was thinking, and here comes the moment of brilliance. See, all of this prior to this is all fucking anarcho-capitalism 101. If you really, anybody who's even a half-ass ANCAP already knows everything I just said. Here's the moment of brilliance. Religious people believe that God created humans, and that humans are so complex that this is evidence there must be a God. It's the Blind Watchmaker. Statist, especially the Statheists, who are the Statists who are also atheists, Statheists believe the government created society and civilization, and that society and civilization are so complicated that they could not have arisen without a government. And it's this circular logic in both cases that excludes a thing called evolution. Here's the thing about Statheists. Statheists believe millions of years ago, there's this planet floating around in space, and somewhere along the way, a couple little cells come together and they start doing some shit together, and then a couple more, and they do some more shit together, and they do some more shit together, and eventually over millions or billions of years, these little cells all turn into higher life forms, and they evolve. They start swimming in the water, and then they grow some legs, and then they're walking around, and then they're walking around even bigger, and then they're eating each other, and then this giant meteor falls out of the sky, and a bunch of them die, and some others start evolving, and they evolve, and they become intelligent enough to vote. They become intelligent enough to buy iPods. They become intelligent enough to invent the internet. So all of this stuff happened from some tiny little cells were able to turn into all this. However, now that those cells have evolved into a creature, a conscious entity, which is capable of creating the internet, capable of going to the moon, capable of making Zoom H2 recorders, capable of building clocks, that these entities are too stupid to figure out how to get along with each other without a state to tell them. We are, at least for the moment, the top of the food chain and the top of the intelligence chain. And we didn't get here through billions and billions of years of evolution by having some fucking central planner like Hussein Obama try to figure it out and decide which cells were going to do what and what laws were going to apply to which cells. Okay? The whole time that every fucking species on Earth has been evolving, social structures have evolved right along with them. Animals, look out your backyard if you have a backyard. Do you see birds running around forming corporations and forming gangs and warlords and murdering each other? No. Do you see squirrels running around murdering and raping each other? No. You go out in the wild, do you see a wolf pack? Do you see gangs of wolf packs running around trying to kill each other? No. Now, of course, you do see animals behaving in ways that are not natural, because all of these things are detrimental to the survival of the species. You see animals doing things detrimental to their survival when their territory is encroached upon, and in many cases, it is dumbass humans encroaching on their territory. Right? So you come in, there's a wolf pack territory here, there's a wolf pack territory there. Humans come in, they shove their way into one wolf pack's territory, the wolves are driven out into the territory of the other wolf pack. Now you have conflict between the wolf packs. But in the state of nature that Hobbs and those of you who are Statheists, it's a state of nature where you believe everybody's running around killing each other and raping each other and nobody can cooperate. If you actually go look at animals living in a state of nature, there are some animal species where, yes, you do indeed see rape. For example, dolphins. All Statheists love dolphins. Dolphins are so fucking intelligent. Okay, if they're so intelligent, why do they keep getting caught in those nets? Dolphins fucking rape each other. So much for your fucking intelligence theory. They're obviously not that smart because they haven't figured out non-aggression and property rights yet, have they? But for the most part, because there are always exceptions, for the most part, animals in the state of nature coexist. They get along. They form societies. These societies fucking work. The reason in our human society people are running around killing each other, raping each other, stealing from each other, killing each other with flying robots and all this other shit is not because of the absence of government. Because we don't have an absence. All of this is happening with the government. Anybody who says, well, if we don't have the government, there'll be gangs and warlords on the streets, and the corporations will rule everything, and nobody will build any roads. Well, the roads aren't worth a shit. The president is a warlord, the police and the military are gangs, and the corporations do fucking rule the land. The world you think would exist if we lived in an ANCAP society is the fucking world you live in now. You're just too fucking stupid to realize it. Because you're a religious fanatic. Because you believe the government created society.